Hello and welcome to Just Africa, where we dive deep into trends shaping our world. And today we will be exploring a critical and timely issue. It is the financial ecosystem reform in Africa, with a spotlight on Kenya and Nigeria. Now, across the continent, the financial landscape is evolving at an extraordinary pace. Now, from the mobile money revolution in East Africa to fintech explosion in West Africa, we are witnessing a digital transformation with the potential to reshape economies and empower millions. And yet, despite these advances, millions of people, especially women, youth, and those in the rural communities, remain excluded from formal financial systems. Access to credit, savings, insurance, and digital repayment solutions is still out of reach for far too many. Financial ecosystem reform is not just a policy matter, it is a catalyst for equitable growth. It is about redesigning the system to serve everyone, not just the privileged few. It is about building inclusive infrastructure, crafting enabling regulations, and fostering innovations that works for the people. Today, we turn our focus to two of Africa's most dynamic economies, Kenya and Nigeria. These nations offer both lessons and opportunity. Kenya, a global pioneer in mobile money, shows what is possible when infrastructure and innovation meet purpose. Nigeria, on the other hand, Africa's most populous country and a fintech powerhouse, represents both the immense potential and complex challenges of building a truly inclusive financial future. So, how do we move from potential to progress? What policies, partnerships, and technologies are needed to make inclusive economic empowerment to make it a reality? Welcome to Just Africa. I am Olumide Sokoya. Of course, I'm not the only one here. I have Krumale Oyinpreye. How you doing? How's your weekend? Happy New Week.
Yes, Happy New Week to you, Olumide. And it's great to be right in the face of Nigerians, Africans, and of course, indeed, all over the world. I had an incredible weekend, but while I was having time for myself during the weekend, I was pondering over the conversation we will be having this morning over the financial inclusion and the reform taking place both in Nigeria and Kenya. And when beaming my searchlight into Kenya, I realized that in 2006,
yes,
only about 26% of Kenyans is, according to the Kenyan Central Bank, where you can be found in the conventional banking system. Just 26% of Kenyans could be looked at as people who are using the formal banking services. But moving forward to 2007, we saw that the Central Bank of Kenya, the Capital Market Authority of Kenya, the Kenyan Bank Association, and the financial sector deepening Kenya, which is a think tank that has joined forces with other financial sector stakeholders to make sure that they deepen and carry out a reform that really bring in financial inclusion to people around Kenya took place, and we realized that by the time they moved from 2007 rather, to 2021, where in 2007 they established the M-Pesa, which is the digital final inclusion tool. M stands for mobile, and the Pesa is a name for money in Swahili language. So it serves as mobile money. And it was introduced in Kenya, and before it's established in 2007, and before they got to 2022, that means in 2021, about 83% of Kenya have been banked, brought into the financial sector. And that sparks off is something we can refer to as what happened during the telecommunication when it came into Nigeria, and how the introduction of telecommunication into the system brought about other innovations into issues like CUDA, the POS, and the OPays, and other mobile money instruments that came into the Nigerian financial space, even though currently they seem to be having loggerheads with the conventional banking system. But
Yes.
it's a good thing, because right now, compared to what used to happen before, in Kenya and in Nigeria, we can see that a whole lot of people are now in the banking system.
Yes. Looking at Nigeria, Nigeria is actually developing when you look at the financial system, looking at fintechs and all that. Just like you rightly said, we have OPay, we have MoneyPoint, we have all this. But there seems to be this rancor between the conventional bank and, of course, these fintech. And I remember how there was a rumor about a particular fintech. I'm not mentioning the name, that they were about to close down, that people should start withdrawing their money and this and that. Then we heard the rumor that it was actually filtered by another bank trying to upturn that fintech. It's a whole lot, but you know, it's good to see that these fintechs, now if you look at how many people, most people now that I speak to, they rather put their money in their in these fintechs banks, yes, rather than this thing. All right, so we'll go on a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring in our guest. Welcome back. This is Just Africa. Let's bring in our guest. He is Julius Afolabi. He is a strategy consultant and premium income architect and creator of Designing Your Own Economy Framework. So glad to have you this morning. Welcome to Just Africa.
Good morning, and thank you very much. I hope I'm
All right, welcome to Just Africa. So we're discussing economic, financial ecosystem reforms in Africa. Can you take us through, first of all, what is the current financial ecosystem in Africa, with Kenya and Nigeria as the potential focus?
Okay. Currently, in Nigeria, we're seeing financial ecosystem reforms happen from the mobile digital transformation, taking advantage of digital penetration. And we see the same thing happening in Kenya as well. Whenever we say financial ecosystem reforms, we're talking about how we can stabilize the economy, provide financial services to the large population of the unbanked. That's basically financial inclusion in all financially related services, and ensuring that there is enough empowerment within this ecosystem to be able to stabilize the economy, create resilience, and power up the other areas, other macroeconomic areas. So, but in Kenya, we're seeing quite an interesting and amazing stride in terms of mobile money penetration, right? With the M-Pesa, right? M-Pesa, right? So which has done a lot, but still has quite some things to also do. Like in Nigeria, basically, I'll say that we have done very well, but because of low trust and I'll say identity fragmentation, and I'll also include maybe poor implementation, right? And then our policy somersaults. Those are the reasons for our financial inclusion challenges in Nigeria. Nigeria has a higher stake in this financial ecosystem reform and inclusion than in Kenya. Population-wise, of course, Nigeria is almost about 4 times as populated as Kenya. But Kenya has embraced the digital transformation so well, much more than Nigeria. The only challenges that we have in Kenya relate to the demographic um, analysis. If you look at the demographics and if you look at the potentials of the financial inclusion, ecosystem reforms, you find out that there is a gap. You can't have internet access of about 40% or less than 50%, and you have mobile access of over 95% penetration. That gap there is going to create a fracture in implementation and the speed of impact, right? And then you also find out that the digital literacy in Kenya is not has not up-leveled to be able to accommodate the potential of that financial inclusion revolution that has in place. And you find out that also in the population of Kenya, you find out that women are almost about 50% of that particular population are much more involved in the economic activities, right? Yet they are micromanaged in the sense that there are certain policies that are working against them. For instance, they don't have property rights, which limits them from placing a collateral to acquire credits that can influence their business. So you see, if you have a particular demography that is responsible for economic growth of the nation, but they are limited in access to funds, you will trap the development, right? So in that aspect, in that area, you find out that there needs to be a policy reform to give women that property access. And also, you find out that there is a skill mismatch in the youth. The youth population is in the neighborhood of about 75, 70, between 70 and 80%, right? That are under 35, according to statistics. Under 35. That's a brilliant and a marvelous demography to be able to penetrate with M-Pesa, right? But you now find out that a lot of the economic activities that take place happen in the rural areas, which do not have the internet access and the infrastructure to take advantage of M-Pesa. So you see, despite the mobile technology penetration, one, the fact that the literacy level is low, the chunk of unbanked capital is large, right? And the ability to be able to access funds for the primary influencers of the economy is not going to help the reforms as it ought to, right? So if you have an informal sector that is almost above 80%, right? And you find out that the unbanked population is about half that informal sector participation. So what do? It creates a gap. Unlike to compare it with Nigeria too. In Nigeria too, it's only in the far north that you will find out that the unbanked or women or gender sensitive issues or access to credit limits their inclusion. So there is the need for policy innovation and reformation that is going to include the population that influences the economic activities. And also, there needs to be technological infrastructure that will aid or penetrate into the areas that require these technology advantage. M-Pesa has good potential, right? Fantastic potential. But until these seemingly little challenges are taken into consideration and addressed, we can get the full benefit of that particular that project. It's a very laudable project, and Kenya with
Mr. Julius Afolabi, thank you so much. Thank you for that analysis. It's quite incisive. But I want to take your attention to somewhere where it all started and making comparisons with the focus of both Nigeria and Kenya. Back then in 1995, 1997, 1998, we cannot begin to talk about financial inclusion or the banking reforms that will cater to the needs of majority of Nigerians or majority of Kenyans. But something happened. The advent of telecommunication and information technology made us, saw the light and the potential on what Nigerian and other African countries can do when it comes to banking and banking inclusion. The same thing happened in Kenya until Vodafone, an arm of Vodafone, Safaricom in 2007, brought in this M-Pesa to register as mobile money. Then the issue about financial, money inclusion and reform, and we're not really talked about. So in your own words, please, what role did you think that telecommunication played in it by itself to reform and re-engender the system of banking and financial dealings in Africa, in Kenya and in Nigeria?
There is no main contribution we can, if we are to value the impact of telecommunication and information technology in general human reform, it is totally, unquantifiable. Now, since technology, digital revolution is a global effect, and Africa seems to be a deposit and a reservoir of the resources that feed the global economy in one way or the other. We cannot divorce the infiltration of these, technology and telecommunications into the African society. So the impact of telecommunication and technology in banking revolution and financial inclusion in Africa entirely, and the nations of Africa that show particular interest and have a viable population. If you are talking about telecommunications and you're talking about technology, of course, the youth is the center of the agenda. And if we have a very vibrant population who is directly interested in technology and mobile telecommunication and technology, then it will affect every aspect. Money is a central subject. There is virtually nothing that you're going to do in any economy without the input of what? Money. So you see, so that cannot be taken away from them. Do you understand me? That cannot be taken away. So the impact of technology and information technology, which is the rave of the moment globally, right? Of course, you can see the impact on social media. And that's why you are finding out that the traditional banking system needed no any form of chastisement or any form of encouragement to adapt to that, knowing fully well that the population, the fruitful population of its nation or Africa as a continent is resident in that. Check it, look at it very well. If you look at the impact of information technology, it is lying within the youth category, not even the middle class, right? From the ages of 25 downwards, you find out that technology, you can't divorce them from technology. My 10-year-old daughter can unscramble any device. We had, some time ago, about 3 days ago, we had a phone locked. And we didn't know, I was thinking of taking it to an expert to unlock the phone. And with focus and concentration on trying to unlock the phone, she unlocks the phone. So you see, it is naturally, they are cloned. They are just netizens. So you can't take away that. And if they form the active part of the population, in the schools, who do we find? In job places, why do we find age limits? Because we are looking for agility, even though we are working on their character, right? And concentration and attention, right? But if you're looking at innovation, agility, speed, then it is in the useful population. And you can't separate the bank from it. So the bank had to take cognizance of that demographic influence in order to be able to adapt to them. That's why you find out that the trillionaire banking system now is the fintech. All banks now have a fintech, a fintech aspect, right? And the fintech aspect is what is driving all the activities of that particular bank. So traditional banking is dead. It's digital banking that is now in vogue. And that's why you find even the smaller fintech organizations have higher capitalization than the other established banks, right? So, and that's why you find every bank now creating their fintech aspect to be able to take care of these potentials and these opportunities.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Julius Afolabi. Thank you very much for that. Now, earlier on, when I asked you the first question, you made mention of policy somersault. So can you shed light more on that? You made mention of policy somersault in Nigeria. Also, what role does policy and regulation, what role do they play in enabling or hindering financial inclusion in these both countries, Kenya and Nigeria?
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you for that question. For instance, today, if you have a policy reformation in Kenya that gives the liberation for women to own property, right? Look at how far that will go. That will enable them, give them the confidence to approach financial institutions, place their property as collateral, and get loans to invest their business. The gender sensitivity of access to credit is already taken care of, will no longer become a challenge. Will no longer become. That's the power of policy reforms. Now, when we talk about policy somersault in Nigeria, it is not new. It is like a perennial disease in Nigeria. We rarely fully test run a particular process before we implement. We saw that when we were trying to go cashless, right? We saw the cashless, policy, which had a lot of potential, but because of the timing of implementation, process of implementation, it saw a catastrophe, right? We saw when we were trying to change our currencies, right? Those are policy reforms, right? That could enable or hinder business as it can ground the economy, right? We saw that. So most of the time, Nigeria, despite the enormity and the richness of the resourcefulness of our human capital, we do not stress test, especially, um, I mean, financial policy reforms with the idea and the impact of the deficiency of our information technology infrastructures before we deploy. We feel Nigerians can rough it. Nigerians don't complain, they will cope. Nigerians have this capacity to withstand stress. So we push it to them. We are now working from a reaction. We operate a reactive policy formulation. And that's what makes it a somersault. Until the people begin to react, we will not go back to address what we need to address. So we find out that they have gone silent about many things, right? When the POS, which is supposed to be another form of financial service delivery to enable rural penetration and reach the unbanked, right? Which was a lot of ease in the economy. The policies surrounding it also became what a challenge. Recently, you will see the introduction of charges, right? It's becoming a particular project. Imagine me walking into a shop about 2 weeks ago. I walked into a shop to buy 2 bottles of Sprite, and the POS agent was telling me that you have to charge me for paying. When the POS is supposed to be an instrument for effective business efficiency on its own part, am I supposed, as a consumer, supposed to pay charges for buying from him? And the man said we charge trickle to them. So these are the things. These are the at the local level. This is at the local level. So we don't make macroeconomic reforms without proper analysis of microeconomic effects. So this is where our gap is in policy somersault in Nigeria. That requires what? A proper sit down to check what the stress test, comparing, looking into our power deficiency, our infrastructural deficiency, educational, our skill, financial literacy, and educational mismatch or gap. In Kenya, that is a particular problem. There is need for mainstream financial literacy education in Kenya if it must see the progress that it wants. In Nigeria, we need infrastructural liberation, right? For institutions and economies. I'll say, there are businesses in Nigeria that have created their own economy. They generate their own power. They generate their own infrastructure. And you find out that they become a nation in a nation. Schools like that, right? Businesses like that. So they are developing independent infrastructural ability to be able to drive the economy within the economy. So we have people developing their own economy within the economy because of national neglect of this infrastructural robustness to accommodate everybody. So that's why we have policies somersault in Nigeria. Now, if you go back to Kenya again, you find out that they have devolved funds, right? Forgetting the name of that, they are devolved funds, right? Now, what is the impact assessment of that fund, right? Is it reaching the people that it's supposed to reach? And what are the policies surrounding how well they are annexed? If you go to Bangladesh, you see microfinance is the center of the economic stability of Bangladesh through what? Microfinance, right? And which is dominated largely by women and village cooperative society, right? They have understood their demography. They understand the principal players in the economy. They adapt their technology and their policies to those drivers in order to experience what they have to do. You can see it is easy for them to have digital IDs linked. In India, that's what happened. You have their digital IDs linked to their accounts. It's easy. And that's what's happening in other countries like in China. You find out that with your mobile phone, you can do anything. You don't, it's cashless, it's seamless, because why? The absorption of technology, the policies, the financial policies surrounding it, and the reformations that they have embraced enable them to achieve that level of success. So you see.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Julius. Please, I want to bring you to a terrain that you have referenced, but I needed you to make some clarifications concerning that. The Kenya Bureau of Statistics published that about 83% of Kenyan economy is driven by the informal sector. And those who drive this informal sector, most of them are sometimes not being banked. However, the financial inclusion reform has brought some of them into the frame of things. But one of the significance and one advantage that comes with the reform is access to credit. But these persons still cannot have access to credit because the credit bureaus or the digital credit platforms in Kenya are equally doing the same thing that the digital credit platforms are doing over here in Nigeria, where they take your details and they give you credit, but when you're unable to pay back at a specific point in time, they paint you and they call you all sorts of names in public domain. This has led the Kenya financial authorities to bring in new regulatory framework. I mean, it's happening in Kenya. It happened in Nigeria. Of course, we do not have doubt that it's going to happen in other African countries where these processes are taking place. What sort of policy framework do you think the government of Kenya can bring into place to ameliorate these anomalies and these lapses experienced in the financial sector?
Beautiful. Now it's very easy. You can't they say ignorance is not an excuse in law, right? You cannot fault an uneducated person, right? You can't fault an uneducated somebody that you have not properly educated. You cannot hold that person to ransom when that person defaults in the opportunity that you are giving to them. Right, I quite understand. Even though I lost you in part of the questions that you were asking, right? But I understand that the fact that access to microcredit is low, and then a policy came. Yes, I know the policy came bringing them into inclusion. Now there is no credit management mentorship, right? And there is no policy document that implements and drive that. Like for instance, in the Western world, you have a credit score, right? If you have the credit score alone tells us what your capacity is, what your character, what your capacity is. It has already done all the 5 C's that we do in banking before we give out loans, right? You need collateral, which is the last resort. You need capacity. You need your character. You need so the credit score rating, which is I mean, available to everyone who intends to deal with you or any financial institution dealing with you, gives us the capacity to know what you're qualified for. The fact that we want to give credit does not mean it is available for everybody. No, there must be a pre-qualification process that permits you to do that. Now, the failure of that in Nigeria is this. The moment you have a mobile phone, and because we want to give out loan, you understand, on your phone, you can easily access the credit. What is what's the assessment? What's the assessment that has been done about the authenticity of the user, right? Authenticity of the user before advancing such persons to credit. Now, I have had people who have come to me when they have those challenges. Of course, somebody is in dire need of cash and he has the opportunity to access a loan from a bank from a digital device. And they ask him to provide maybe 2 people, you understand, as referees. Of course, he has an uncle somewhere that he has his contact on his phone and you supply them in order to get that credit. Are we together? It gets access to the credit. What other way is the funds available to this person monitor? Now, in higher banking transactions, when they give you, when they advance you credit, they monitor the credit to ensure that all transactions that you are doing have recourse to the person that offered you the access to the money before money is spent or given out. Right? In the bank, there's something called push no debit, right? You can't debit that account without the authority of the bank before the person that gave that instrument for transaction. So you see it now. Now, because of behavior, we need some amount of behavioral science, behavioral science and behavioral economics to be able to manage people. You can't start calling out people in public domain because they defaulted in paying you back. Yes, they have defaulted. If you call them out in public domain, what are you going to achieve? You are damaging their reputation without considering what is responsible for that. There are a lot of things that happen when people get money. That is not, for instance, a lot of things happen. They can give you funds, and then there's a particular policy reform in a particular sector that affects the credit you are taking. You do not have control over that. When the value or the exchange rate changes.
If I may come in less than a minute, can you tell us, looking at cryptocurrency and central bank digital currency, the e-Naira, what role do these two play in the financial ecosystem reform? Are they being widely accepted, looking at Nigeria and Kenya? What role do they play in the reform?
They are going to play a good role because it makes financial transactions easy, right? They are going to make the financial transaction payment exchange of value easy, but we are not right. We don't have the character to manage that. In cryptocurrency, you can accept where we have advanced our technology to that trend, where we can trace missing money. You understand what happened with CBEX in Nigeria recently, right? You can't, that money is lost. When it gets into the cryptocurrency domain, it's easy with blockchain. Except you have that advanced technology, you can't trace that money. Once it is dissolved, it's in liquid form. It's almost like air, right? The moment it gets into that system, it dissolves, it disintegrates. Tracing it is very easy. So, except we have that cyber security architecture that can manage the volatilities of e-currency and cryptocurrency, we are not right for it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Julius Afolabi. This is a perfect place to land. We do appreciate your opinions and thoughts and insight this morning on financial ecosystem reform in Africa. Thank you very much. All right, that was Mr. Julius Afolabi, strategy consultant and premium income architect and creator of Designing Your Own Economy framework, discussing the financial ecosystem. What are your thoughts about what he said?
I like his analysis. I like his comparisons between Nigerian system, the difficulties and the bottlenecks we went through by way of policy, and how the same thing is reflecting in Kenya. And the same thing that Nigeria also experienced when there was, I will call it, when people want to access credit, probably most especially, credit is normally given for business purposes.
Yes.
Because the banks feel that that is only the way they can ensure that that money is going to be used for productive means. You're going to most likely have a return on investment so that you'll be able to pay back the money and the profit that you are paying back, that you borrowed from the lending authorities. However, sometimes when businesses go to access these credit facilities, or maybe individual businesses, they're unable to get them. And because they are being told you need to bring collateral.
Yes.
And sometimes not everybody have a house in Banana Island or in Ikeja or in Apapa in choice places. Even if your uncle has a house there, you cannot use your uncle's house until you get his permission for that purpose. And when they don't have that, just the way the digital banking systems, bulldoze their way into the financial system, and they were contending with the conventional banks. That's the same way credit institutions that give credit facility to businesses and individuals also experienced the same fight with digital credit institution, digital credit platforms who came in. However, the digital credit platforms actually suffered their fate. Now, I would not say they are completely loose out of the system, because they've equally put in place measures that they need to put those who are coming to borrow credit in check, but not that process whereby they need to, call out people in public domain.
I was going to say that.
Not that. But now, if you see sometimes the people tell you there are institutions or there are organizations where you can go buy phones and you buy laptops, and they are telling you you do not have to come with the whole amount of money to pay for the phone. You come with 30% of the money to pay for the phone. After you've paid, then they can now spread out the rest of 70%. For like 6 months or 5 months. And if you are able to do that, because I was able to do that, immediately they saw that, I paid up the remaining balance within the specific period of time. So they felt, he has integrity. So then they moved further ahead to begin to sell me other credit product, other credit facilities that, you can get a loan. And this time I wasn't sent a text message. One of the agents had to call me from those institutions, those organizations. I thought they were only into selling phones for credit or for half credit, but they're now telling me, we can give you a credit facility spanning to 500,000 naira, 700,000, and 1 million naira. We've seen your track record.
With no collateral, nothing?
Yeah. Well, of course, with no collateral. No collateral, but there are things they are going to provide. They are going to monitor you, and they are going to, if you look at it very well, if you are owing some of these institutions some amount of money, and you are going to another bank to want to borrow money, there is a way they are linked together, and the system, there's a central platform that is going to display your details that look, he's already owing bank A or bank B, either in the conventional banking system or in the digital credit platform. In other words, those other organizations will not be able to facilitate that credit that you are requesting for, because they felt you owe an obligation to another organization where you need to pay up your fee. So I think they've put in some good measures in place, because we remember the government came out really against some of them that were using those unseemly means to collect back their money. And the same thing as is happening in Nigeria is also happening in Kenya. To the extent that the Kenyan Central Bank, the Central Bank of Kenya, and other Kenyan Bank Association, the Capital Market Authority, and some other institutions who are stakeholders trying to bring in the inclusive and reform system are to come out to make sure that, there are things we need to put in place, because when credits fail, when you fail to pay back your debt, it weakens the system of trust, and they begin to have doubts to others who are coming for that purpose to access credit for other good and beneficial purpose.
All right, so let's pause from there for now. We'll take Cashcraft right now, and we're looking at honey. Yes, you get to find out what you can actually do with honey and the benefits, looking at the financial part of it also. We'll be right back.
Welcome to Cashcraft, where we uncover the gold in every enterprise. Today, we explore a buzzing opportunity that is sweet, sustainable, and seriously profitable: beekeeping and honey production. Nigeria's honey demand is rising, but supply still falls short, creating a lucrative gap in the market. Beekeeping is a low-capital agribusiness with high returns, especially when done organically. From honey to beeswax, propolis to royal jelly, every part of the hive has commercial value. Imagine this: low startup, high yield, a beginner-friendly venture with starter kits costing 50,000 naira to 150,000 naira and profit margins above 60% after the first harvest. That is very possible. Also, are you thinking climate advantage? Nigeria's tropical vegetation and long flowering seasons make it ideal for beekeeping almost year-round. So that's a good business to venture into. Now let's look at health and organic market boom. Natural unadulterated honey is in high demand. This demand kept increasing on a daily basis. not just locally, but across West Africa and international markets. And it is used for different purposes, from health to skincare, culinary, and more. You may need further research, professional advice to understand exactly what I am talking about. Now, value chain potential. Processing and packaging honey, producing beeswax candles, selling hives, or even offering training is the way to go. Do not miss out. Just so you know, this is a climate-smart, gender-inclusive business that doesn't require owning a land or intensive labor. Here is how to take advantage. Start small with training and support. Enroll in the basic beekeeping course. Many NGOs, agricultural institutions, and cooperatives offer short-term hands-on training. Join a cooperative to access shared equipment, farmland, and easier entry into the market. Invest in starter kits. Begin with 1 or 2 hives. Starter kits typically include protective gears, a smoker, hive tools, and a bee colony. All you need to get started. Explore the full value chain. Process and bottle raw honey for local or boutique markets. Create value-added products such as beeswax candles, lip balm, soap, and natural polish. Build and sell beehives or rent them to farms for pollination services. Offer training and mentorship as your experience grows. Target empowerment opportunities. That's very key. Many donor-funded projects now support climate-smart land-light ventures like beekeeping, making it ideal for women and youth with limited capital but strong entrepreneurial drive. From the wild to the wallet, beekeeping is more than a craft. It's a golden opportunity. With the right training and tools, you can turn nature's sweetest gift into your next source of steady income. And you know what? You don't need to think twice. If you want to go into it, take that decision now and get started. I am Grace Komalafe, and this is Cashcraft. I'll see you again some other time. Bye.
We've got just what you need right here at Femi Wash Media. Call it the Midas Touch, and you wouldn't be wrong. Let us record, produce, mix, and master your audio like nobody does. Reach us on our contact today for the best quality job.
Welcome back. This is Just Africa. We just had Cashcraft and we talked about honey. And honey is actually, it has a whole lot of health benefits. It relieves coughs, wound burn. It's actually used as an alternative for those who have a sweet tooth. I was asking you earlier on, I think last week, where I can actually get original honey.
Anybody, most people who actually wants to buy honey, that's the word they stress, original honey. And that's because some of it out there has been adulterated. Even the ones who could lay their hands on the original honey will actually adulterate it in order to, to increase the quantity and want to make excess benefit. And one of the great experiences I had, or I was actually advised to do, was you replace sugar with honey. And most of the times, I don't want my voice to sound hoarse like you are hearing right now. I needed to take honey with tea or with any of the beverages, and it has a way of smoothing my voice so I can speak properly and not have any form of phlegm in my throat. And that's actually okay. But the thing is, the market for honey, it's large.
Yes.
Given its industrial use, its informal and personal use.
Yes.
However, we also need, because most of the time, the industrial aspect of it is most of the time what we don't live up to. And I cannot begin to blame that on the scare and the fear that businessmen and investors, operate on. They felt like, okay, there's so much, drum being beaten about the specific product and how good it is and how profitable it is business-wise. And so even if you have adequate knowledge or the seemingly adequate knowledge of the market, because of its inconsistency, looking at others who have delved into it and they have a different story to tell, which is contrary to what you have heard or the diagnosis of what you can get from business developers, they tend to shy back. So most of the time you are getting honey, and most of the time the market for it is just households and individuals, and it completely moves away from the industrial aspect, which could fetch the nation a large quantity of it.
Very well. Now, coming back to the financial ecosystem reform, I want us to look at our own digital currency, that's the e-Naira, side by side with cryptocurrency. I remember that Trump made an announcement earlier on about regarding cryptocurrency, how it will be used as another form of leisure and all that, payments and all that. And I'm wondering, when would we fully accept cryptocurrency in Nigeria, side by side with e-Naira also? And how well is e-Naira? How many people use it? How many people are actually engaged in that?
I remember very well when the previous administration, CBN, came out to launch that, and they introduced the e-Naira wrongly. And there was this fear by people who just feel, oh, I'm not going to go for it. Because while they were telling Nigerians to stay away from cryptocurrency, it was at the same time that they were shutting out everybody, almost young Nigerians who were jumping into that, the cryptocurrency, and they were able to make some dollars out of it. And because they felt the system cannot be actually monitored, the system cannot actually be regulated, and they can't really, shine a limelight on it to know the happenings there, because it's a platform. Most times you hear rumor that it's a platform where people can steal money and store it right there, and you cannot trace it. During the NSAS protests, so those who were sponsoring the protests were accused that they were actually sponsoring the protest using cryptocurrency because they do not want the government to trace them. And a few of them who were traced and caught by the government, confirmed that side of the story. Apart from that, recently, the Securities and Exchange Commission came out with a new guidelines and new regulations on commodities. And when the new guidelines came in, they were putting out things like cryptocurrency or digital asset management, excuse me, and what it is required, what are digital assets. Excuse me, you see, I need honey. Like I said earlier. So they were putting out guidelines on digital assets and how it is part of the commodities that will be traded and how it will be monitored by the government. So in other words, the government is not going back on its words, I would say, but I think it is beginning to find a regulatory framework by way of policy and how these can be used and how it is accepted within the commodities market and how it is regulated, how it is acceptable, and the guidelines that should govern the transaction within that space. So I think we're doing well for it. However, the e-wallet, there is no, what I saw from it, there was no gain. If you save your money in the e-wallet, okay, we're told that it is from there you can remove money to facilitate other things, but the benefits are quite slim. So if the benefits are quite slim and the advantages are not really what they've really clarified to create awareness for the Nigerian or for the African, they just felt that, they will stay back. So it's almost becoming like a dream that is gone to its grave, that is dead and buried. But I think the government, through the National Orientation Agency or the Nigerian Securities and Exchange Commission, and the leaders and the stakeholders in the financial space will need to bring that to Nigerians and to re-explain it in order to make it more acceptable within the polity.
Well, frankly, you have said a whole lot. I remember when I was in Ghana, now a lot of populations in Ghana are unbanked, so they make use of this digital platform called Momo, whereby you can just send money to my phone number, and all I just have to do is take it to a vendor and impute. There's a code that will be sent, and I'll give the person the code and I'll collect the money. Very smooth way of sending money, because when we got to Ghana, you know, the hassle of going to meet one Alaji to change your naira to the CD or transferring to Alaji and Alaji wait for you to confirm and all that, it was quite hectic. So when I was told about that, it was frankly a very smooth way of, you know, sending money, because you realize that for you to have a bank account, first of all, you must be a citizen. You must have an ID card for that particular country, and a lot of them do not have this. And so that's the quickest way for the, I won't call them peasants, but for the people, the ordinary man, to send and receive money and do business.
But I think it's very, very glaring. The government puts out a policy to regulate the banking system, to regulate the financial system, and sometimes some of these policies, instead of creating financial inclusion, it's rather creating financial exclusion. And that is why the transformation that came in through the digital banking platform is widely accepted. Now people use their phone numbers as bank accounts.
Bank accounts.
M-Pesa, the money, the digital money, M-Pesa in Kenya that I referenced when we were speaking about earlier. It's a replication in Nigeria. It's normal, the POS, the OPay, the First Money, and all other platforms. It's just that in Nigeria, we have quite a number of them, so numerous to maintain. We equally saw, like I said earlier on, the fight begin between the conventional banking platform, because they know, I will call it the business of politics, or the politics of business. Because when they saw that, oh, Nigeria is more than 200 million people, and the Nigerian Senate, the House of Representatives, including the executive arm of government, have been saying, and scholars and experts, that look, we have a larger population of Nigerians who are not currently banked. The same thing happened in Kenya. Lots of Kenyans who are not banked. And within 2007, that M-Pesa came to 2021, which is just about 14 years. 14 years. From 26% of those who are being banked, adults who are being banked in the conventional, on the formal banking platform, moved to about 83%. Can you imagine that jump and that leap? One other thing that made it that smooth in Kenya, though it is not without its shortfalls or its shortcomings, one of the things that made it's because the Central Bank of Kenya was in the system, was in the frame of this to facilitate the smoothness of that specific, the inclusive banking reforms. The Capital Markets Authority was equally in that system. The Kenya Bankers Association was in that system. The Financial Sectors Deepening Kenya, that's the FSD Kenya, a donor funded with think tank to develop these inclusive reforms, equally played a digital role. It played a very, very specific and critical role. But now the thing is, what we should be talking about is credit, access to credit. Because if a lot of what actually drives the business or is the SMEs in Kenya, and most of the SMEs are outside of the formal banking sector. They are outside. They are in the informal sector. If they are in the informal sector, those who operate in salons by the wayside, those who are into butchery, those who sell the farm produce and other businesses that are outside the formal sector, if through this platform they can have access to credit, then that is the way it's going to actually expand the frame of things with the way not only are they going to achieve the goal or the objective that the informal sector is being banked or that credit is being made available, but there need to be other regulatory activities that will need to be put in place. Those who will be accessing credit also have the obligation to pay back this credit.
Thank you very much. We can only hope that these reforms will take place sooner or later, and that the wide acceptance would be encouraged. This is where we will draw the curtains for Just Africa this morning, this afternoon, wherever what time frame you are using to watch us right now. We'll be closing out with Madagascar on the uniqueness of Africa. Until we meet again, I am Olumide Sokoya. Enjoy the rest of your day.
And I'm Oyinpreye Krumale. Many thanks for watching.